we on air? Looks like we're on air. Sweet. Welcome back. Welcome back to me. Doing this again. Got the chat open. Cool. I guess we're ready to go. Still getting woken up here. Still getting woke. Uh-oh. What just happened? Okay, fine. There it is. So what are we doing today? We're going to be continuing to make progress on inking this strip here. I think last time we were here I was working on the kitchen. This whole scene. Whoops. Wrong button. This whole kitchen scene. And it was kind of a productive weekend. My dad, who is in assisted living now as well, he was able to get out of the building for a while. They loosened up restrictions on his assisted living place, which means now that he can leave the premises without having to, in non-emergency situations, which means that we were able to bring him over for the afternoon, sit on the porch and kick back a few beers and talk about things, and it was a good time. He's been cooped up for the last like 4 months, give or take. So you know, barring any like emergency situations where we were allowed to take him to appointments and stuff, we just haven't had any face-to-face, and it's been really hard on him. So yeah, Saturday was a great afternoon. We were able to spend the day together, and you know, in the sunshine on the porch. It was fantastic. In other news, been making progress on my query letter and book proposal, which is visible here. And it's been a steady process of editing and trying to refine this thing down to just a few solid pages that captures people's attention and explains to them why this story is important right now, why they should take a chance on helping to publish it, because I'm looking for a partner to get the book out there and try to reach a wide audience. I think I've nailed it. So I just have to do a couple more things, and thanks to the help of my good friends Doug and Corey, you know, they've really helped me isolate places where I could tighten things up a bit and refine my writing, because it's amazing the blind spots that can occur when you get really attached to certain things that you've written. So then, you know, in addition to the opening 3 pages of this query letter, I've also got an additional 12 pages of sample material, or 16 rather pages of sample material. No, 15. And saved out as a PDF. These are all artboards in Illustrator. Saved out as a PDF, this comes out to just under 10 megs, which I believe will be the perfect size for emailing. So we'll see how that goes. I got a couple of publishers I'm looking at hitting up soon. And so, yeah, I'm a little nervous about it, but the time has come. You know, it's been, God, a couple of years now, and I'm more than halfway done with this thing. By my count, if we do like 3 of the daily strips per page, like we have the Sunday strip that takes up a full page, and then there's a page that'll have 3 dailies. Then another 3 dailies. That's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then another Sunday strip. So that's 7 strips for every 3 pages. Approximately 130 pages or so is what that comes out to. But you can also do 2 per page, or I could do it like I've been doing online, which is like the grid format, and maybe 1 per page. So it can be anywhere between 130 to 180 or so pages. Just depends how you break it down, but that's something we'll cross that bridge later, I guess. So anyway, getting back to the work at hand. We worked on the kitchen last time a little bit. got that scene set up. Emily and I went to the beach on the Washington coast here, the Oregon coast rather, on Thursday. And I attempted to draw on the beach and got very little done because the sand and the wind were just insane. But what I did get done is kind of laid out the kitchen sink a little bit from this close-up angle. As you can see, I tried to get the little rack, the draining rack at the bottom of the sink in there with a little bit of a faked drop shadow just to give it some depth. And like I mentioned last time, we're building everything on top of a flattened layer that has the text and everything built in already. So that's why art is sitting on top of word bubbles right now. And that's just something I have to deal with for the moment, because this is a unique situation, this particular strip. So I was thinking we should probably do the sink faucet and knobs. So let's just do a single knob right now. Sometimes when I'm doing these ovals, you know, I'll use these guides. The rulers and guides that are in Adobe Draw, they can be really helpful. Kind of like what I did on the sink drain down here. So let's see, let's open up that ruler and use it. And if I use the round brush, I can get a little bit of a taper to kind of give it a little bit of perspective. So like more pressure on the bottom, lighter on top. And it's important to do this as a separate layer because I plan to duplicate the knob for the hot and cold, one on each side. So I just use the eraser around that ruler to cut the line, and then I can hold the pen down right on that line and have it erase completely. So I like the tap and hold method. You can use it to erase whole sections, you can recolor entire objects, or what's really cool is if you add the same color again and tap and hold a few times, you can beef up the stroke width. So see, I'm just doing this over and over to make it wider, which comes in really handy if I've drawn a bunch of stuff and I realize after zooming out that some of the lines need to be heavier. So some more tips from Adobe Draw. Some of these features, I'm not even sure if they really intended that one. That might just be an artifact of like a fill feature. And it's one of the many reasons I'm afraid to like switch to different software in the middle of this project. You know, in addition to consistency, I just really don't want to have these features I've become so accustomed to disappear on me. Let's give this little guy some depth. And as I mentioned before, organic shapes like bodies, pillows, fabric, people, I generally use a tapered brush, so you know things get skinnier as the line comes to an end. But when it comes to things that are hard objects, I try not to. It gives a little bit of difference in the drawings when it comes to materials. Okay, well right away I can see that this knob is a little fat. So let me try to narrow it. And I can already tell perspective-wise that top piece is going to suck because it isn't facing the right angle. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. Let me erase the top on one layer, and then on the other layer erase the bottom. So now I've got two pieces, and I can fine-tune the angle of one of them. You know, this isn't scientific perspective. I haven't measured this out, but I got a good feeling that's going to turn out okay. Oops. Well, see, now this is a great opportunity to just mirror something too, to have it perfectly symmetrical. feeling that. Thank goodness for the undo. Where would we be without it? Okay, so now that this is on its own layer, I'm going to, oops, duplicate it, flip it, and that will work. Well, you know, now that I look at it a little bit more closely, I'm not sure that a knob is tapered like that. Okay, so this is a bit tricky. Sometimes it's hard to grab those handles when you're trying to stretch an object. It can be a little frustrating sometimes, but whatever. It's a bit of a cleft in the top of the knob, but whatever. Yeah, here we go. See, grabbing that handle on the edge there. I'm not able to do it. There we go. So now I think I've reached the point of diminishing returns when it comes to the work I'm putting in versus the reward. So let me just tighten that up. Oops. There we go. So it wants to snap to a perfect, you know, upright angle, so it's hard to get just 1 degree of rotation, and I kind of want to because the sink itself feels a little off. Oh, and look, just totally by accident, I feel like I got the right angle there. So let me just leave it as it is, and I think it needs to be a bit smaller. And we can fatten those lines up like I mentioned earlier, so let me tap and hold a few times. Oops. And then maybe that little divot in the top could use a little color to indicate the temperature or something, so I'll shade that in. Now you can see right here in my layers, well, you can see how that knob is off center in that tiny little thumbnail. That's because apparently I've left a dot here on accident with my hand. So I'm always looking for those little outliers. I'm a bit of a stickler when it comes to that kind of stuff. If there's any sort of like imperfections laying around, they'll usually come back to haunt me when I bring it all into Illustrator to do coloring. So it's good to knock those out as soon as possible. Otherwise you're doing more cleanup later. Oh, well, we probably don't want the knob the same color as the bevel or bezel at the bottom. So let's switch it up. I mentioned last time that my iPad gets a little unresponsive sometimes when plugged in, and I was worried that there was another situation where I might have to take it back to the Apple Store. it seems fine today. I think Dan, my buddy, was right that it might have just been, you know, a little humid in the house midday last time, so my hands were a bit sweaty. Also, just rebooting the thing was a huge help. Okay. Oop. Ah. Can be a real struggle getting these lines right. Just go with it. You know, now that I started this, maybe the right move. Let's use a ruler on this too. We'll do it on a separate layer. That way I don't have to worry about getting the length just right. So then it just becomes about these nice gestural sweeps. And then I can clean it up around the edges with the ruler, or with the eraser. Also, it makes a nice little hard cut off too, so the edges of these things aren't rounded. I don't know how I feel about that. This may very well be overkill. So I think that the illusion would be a little better if I added some gradient color to these lines. So let's just lighten it up a little bit as we go from left to right. That might be a little too light. I'll use that for the last one. There we go. That's feeling better. And like I said, you know, probably overkill, because when we're zoomed out, that's such a minor detail. There is a person who created a graphic novel about his time as a teacher in Japan, and I'm forgetting this guy's name, but he had a really great piece of advice, and that was take shortcuts whenever possible, because his work took him I think he said it was like 12 years or something to finish this comic. And he was like, even though I spent all this time doing the you know, incredible detail on everything, and the end result was beautiful, you know, it took a lot out of his life. And he says, how many, you know, do you want this to be the only thing you do? The only piece of creative effort you've put out? I don't know, I took that to heart. So I try to use shortcuts whenever possible to get to the end goal. And like I mentioned before, the whole comic strip format is really forgiving in that respect. I'm not as critical of repeating things, and I don't think other people are either. You know, like when you have talking head comics where cartoonists are having to produce every single day. You know, it's common to see Calvin and Hobbes in like very, very similar poses. And so if I'm working digitally, why not use some of that to my advantage? Oops, a little bit more. Okay, I'm calling it. We're done with this knob. Now let's duplicate it, one for the other side of the sink. It's funny how this perspective worked. It's like almost I'm using a wide lens, but you know, it's creating a vanishing point down low somewhere. So now one of these guys feels off kilter. Probably it needs to be a bit bigger too. Not bad. And then let's just give it a little bit of a different color on the label, because one side's hot and one side's cold. I can add a little lettering. I like using this chisel-edged brush with lettering because of that calligraphy kind of feel, but at this angle I'm not really sure it's serving me. You know what, that'll do. So now we need the faucet part. Alright, great. Let's do one more layer for that. That's probably fine. I'm going to try to avoid obsessing over the details on this guy. Let's just go commando on it. No net. No net, just an undo button. The ultimate net. Well, actually, so that bezel should not be so big if I know anything about kitchen sinks. Oops. This whole method of duplicating to break the object into a couple of objects so I can work on them separately is something I do a lot. And there's something great, honestly, about Adobe Draw. You know, you've got this limited ability to only use a small number of layers. And I found that that really works to my advantage because I have the tendency to sort of get carried away with how much I want to put in a frame. So it forces a sensibility. It like forces me to make the hard decisions, you know, and sometimes you just have to call it quits on a certain idea, merge the layers, and move on. I think if I had too much freedom, I might be tempted to draw forever and never actually get anywhere. So let's knock out this image layer so I'm not working on top of a word bubble. It's bothering me a little bit, at least for right now. What should this faucet, what kind of faucet should this be? Okay, I got it. Had to take a second to visualize. Feels a little small, like a doorknob. Should we break it up again? Well, it just occurred to me that I'm doing something wrong here. If we're looking down on this faucet, I shouldn't be seeing the underside of it. Let me just get rid of this line altogether. You know, and let's give it more weight as it gets closer to the upright part. And let's see, a little material color. If I merge these guys, let's tap and hold to do a few fills. So this is something I run into sometimes. It won't, you can't tap and hold to fill if it's a broken outline. So you have to look for those gaps. Come on, there we go. And it looks like I could add some highlights. Uh-oh. So it looks like I have some transparency I forgot that I had set. So this is probably a good opportunity to show how to deal with that. I'm going to go ahead and make this a solid color again. Let's do white. So if I tap and hold on these guys, I should be able to recolor them. Oops, hold on. Not white. Wrong layer. So if I tap and hold, I can recolor those guys to be a different color. I really want to match what I have going on the faucet bezels. So I'm going to leave those alone, but for this here, let's see. I want it to be a solid color, not this transparent, because every time I drew a new line, it like added more depth to it. So what you can do is just tap and hold on all those sections, and eventually it will become one object. There we go. So now it's one object, and if I just recolored the whole thing at once, well, it looks like I missed one little piece there. There it is. So now if I were to recolor the whole thing at once, it should act as if it was one object. And it is. And then now I can get in here and fine-tune the gap on the edge. We're almost there. See, there's a gap. Gap hunting is totally a thing for me. Like I'll finish drawing a character and then I want to go in and try to color in by tapping and holding to fill certain areas. And then it's maddening. Like 90% of the time it won't fill because there's a tiny little gap, and I swear it's on purpose. Adobe Draw is trying to help by not necessarily closing objects and filling seams. So, you know, just even doing like a couple of hairlines, you know, something like this. Like if I was doing the hair on top of somebody's head, 9 times out of 10 I'll come here and there will be this microscopic gap right there. So yeah, the gap hunting is fun. It's like this extra annoying game built into this process. Okay. Normally, when I'm doing this work, the people, the talking heads, you know, just having conversational comic strips, that's most of what I like to do. It keeps the story moving forward. I don't always do these kinds of figurative, you know, highly technical strips, but Sunday strips is where that usually manifests. So Monday through Saturdays, where the bulk of the, you know, the primary narrative happens. And then I can tell like these side stories or get into like flashbacks or amazing detail about, you know, environments in these Sunday strips. And they take a long time. So I find that I'll plot out, like you can see here, I've got, that's strip 155. I've already got 156 through 161 mostly solved. And, you know, in the case of this one, you know, repeating the background a few times that I drew once, Really helps. There's even some poses, you know, like I might duplicate the body here of Steve, you know, in panels 1, 2. Just change the head, the orientation of the eyes, eyebrows, mouth, etc. Those are the shortcuts I was talking about. And, you know, these go fast. So I can sit down and I can knock out like 2 or 3 of these in an evening usually. Not including the word bubbles and color and final output. But yeah, then I hit these Sunday strips and it just bogs down everything. But it's really necessary, and it's even become part of the overall style of the strip at this point. You know, some friends of mine were saying that that's one of the things that they really enjoy about it, was the, you know, there's like a rhythm to it. You've got your Monday through Friday story heavy stuff, and then the rhythm on Sundays comes in with these kind of like breaks where you get to see different types of storytelling. Okay, I'm going to say this is good enough. I think I put enough time into this faucet. Push it down. Just for shits and giggles, let's do a little droplet. Doesn't feel dropletty enough yet. Okay, Adobe Draw, your line smoothing is starting to work against me. Now, knowing that this is going to eventually be in print, this little tiny line is probably too small for anyone's good. It's not really going to reproduce well with ink on paper. So that's important to remember. Fatten that up a little bit. And let's just move it to the other side. Is that helping at all? I'm not entirely sure that that's adding anything. It's syrupy. It's a little thick to be a water droplet. Let's get rid of it. Or at least, you know, reduce it down. Okay, let's move on with our lives. That was more than enough of that. Have to add a little bit of counter or backsplash here. Or do we? No, I don't think we do. Because once the word bubbles are on top, you know, there needs to be a little color to differentiate the background from the object. Just having it on white wouldn't be the best thing. I could even reduce the opacity a little bit to make the grays a little bit cooler and add some richness to the grayscale objects. So yeah, let's do that. A lot of times with my background objects, like for instance this kitchen, I'll reduce it to 65% opacity. Like I don't want to blur background objects because, you know, sure I want to create a sense of depth of field like a camera that has a blurry background. Like for instance, the separation between me and the background here. However, the style of this comic does not involve any blur, and so I usually feel that you start adding blur in Photoshop with comics and it just starts feeling a bit Photoshop-y to me. It has to be done really, really well. I'm not even going to go there, so this is my way of separating the background from to creating sort of a depth of field with sharp lines. It's just to, you know, make them a little transparent. And I try to stick to 65% opacity for everything, just for consistency's sake. You know, a couple of rules like that go a long way to keeping things feeling really consistent across the board. Okay, so let's get rid of Mom here. Looks like I have to add this sink stuff to the to our straight on view. Now this is going to be such a subtle line on top of the countertop, I don't really feel like I want to do a hard black outline for it. So let me just sample the color of the sink here. Let's create another layer underneath the kitchen. Heck, let's just use a rectangle to add this slight bump to indicate the sink surface. Whoops. And I'm gonna fatten it up a little bit with this tap and hold. And what that's gonna do is actually round the edges of the square off just a little bit. It's more evident on this side. Adobe Draw kind of has a mind of its own sometimes. But that's cool. Let me just duplicate and flip it. And then merge. So now I've got that rounded edge on both sides. And I know I said I wanted to sample the same color, but that's feeling so washed out. Let me just add a little bit more body to it. And that has exposed a hole in my coloring here in the cabinets themselves. Let's fill that in. let's just do a little quick and dirty kitchen faucet. Okay, so I'm now creating lines that feel way too thick. This is the minimum brush size that I can use right now, and the problem is, you know, it's a small frame. So what I can do is just draw large. So here's this enormous faucet, or knob, and make it the size of a small lampshade. Now at this level of detail, I'm cutting myself a lot of breaks. I'm not going to get as deep into the weeds as I did on that sink just a minute ago. And basically we're going to just make a silhouette out of this. So I'm going to tap and hold to make it the same color as the sink itself, and then reduce the size down. Well, I guess that kind of defeats the purpose of drawing it big to have an outline in the first place. So let me undo. Let's go back to what we had before. Let's just add the fill color to it. I believe the knob was brighter. Whoops, how'd that happen? The knob was definitely brighter than the metal flange at the bottom. There we go. Now let's shrink it down. So now I'm feeling fairly good about the size of it and the stroke width.